My name is Lauren Reed. I'm 29, and for as long as I can remember, Christmas has been the season that reminded me exactly where I stood in my own family. While other people packed for holiday trips, I learned to pack away my expectations. For more than a decade, my parents and siblings planned family Christmas vacations without me. Colorado cabins, Disneyland, Utah ski trips, Caribbean cruises, always with some convenient excuse for why there wasn't room or why they thought I'd be too busy. This year, for the first time in my life, I didn't wait for an invitation that never came. I took my own all-expense-paid Christmas trip with the people who had shown up for me every year while my own family didn't even notice I was missing. And when they found out, they completely lost it. Before we dive in, if you were in my place, how would you feel? And tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? I'd love to know I'm not alone in this. I was 13 the first time it happened. Long before I had the language to name what I was feeling, long before I understood how a pattern begins quietly soft enough that you doubt your own hurt until it grows into something you mistake for normal. That December in Tacoma felt like magic at first. The Reed house was buzzing the way it only ever did around the holidays, the smell of pine and cinnamon drifting from the kitchen where Mom had lined up trays of cookies like decorations. I sat cross-legged on the living room carpet, wrapping presents with uneven corners I kept redoing, hoping someone would notice how hard I was trying to make everything perfect. From the dining room, I heard my parents talking with Emma and Ryan about Christmas at the Snow Ridge cabin in Colorado, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They have a full ski resort, you guys. Ryan bragged, waving a brochure like it was a golden ticket. And a fireplace big enough to roast a whole tree, Emma added, already picturing herself posing in front of it. Their excitement sparkled through the house, and for a moment, I let myself believe I was part of it. I tied a clumsy ribbon and walked over, smiling. So, when do we leave? The room went still in a way I didn't understand then. Mom looked up with that gentle, careful smile she used whenever she was about to disappoint someone. Sweetie, she said softly, the cabin is just a bit too small. It only sleeps 6, and Grandma is coming too. She spoke slowly, like she was breaking bad news about weather or traffic, something no one could control. Dad cleared his throat and added, next year, okay? It's just logistics. Emma and Ryan didn't look at me. They just kept flipping through the brochure, chattering about hot cocoa and snowmen. I stood there, trying to understand what had just happened. I was 13, still young enough to believe adults always told the truth, still naive enough to think family always included you unless something truly unavoidable got in the way. I nodded. Because that's what good kids do. Okay, I said. Next year. But the words didn't land the way I hoped. They felt like something slipping away. A few days later, Mom announced the fun plan she and Dad had come up with for me. I wouldn't be staying home alone. I'd be spending Christmas with Aunt Angela in Portland. She said it brightly, too brightly, as if gifting me something. Just the two of you, she said. A special little Christmas. You love Angela, don't you? I did love Angela. That wasn't the problem. What I couldn't understand then, what I only see clearly now, was how easily they reframed exclusion into a treat, how my absence from the cabin wasn't an oversight or an accident, but a choice softened by careful wording. I was 13, and everything adults said sounded official and reasonable. If they told me something was special, I believed them. So I nodded again. Okay. And they smiled like a problem had been solved. When I arrived in Portland, Angela hugged me so tightly I felt my breath squeeze out. She didn't ask why I wasn't with my parents, she never pushed. Instead, she took my bag, set it down gently, and said, well, sweetheart, we get you all to ourselves this year. Lucky us. Mark showed me the board games he'd pulled from the top shelf, insisting he'd been meaning to dust them off anyway. And little Lily, only a toddler, then wrapped her arms around my leg and refused to let go. Their house was small, warm in the way that comes from people rather than decorations. There were no big displays, no ski lodge glamour, no glossy vacation photos waiting to be taken. But there was attention. Real, soft, undistracted attention that I didn't realize I had been starving for. Angela asked what movies I wanted to watch, what cookies I liked best, what color I wanted the ribbon on my stocking, questions that made me feel like I mattered, like someone cared about, including me, instead of finding reasons I didn't quite fit. On Christmas morning, we sat in the living room in pajamas, with mismatched mugs of hot chocolate topped with melting marshmallows. Lily crawled into my lap, giggling at every gift she unwrapped. Mark taught me how to play a board game. I kept losing but kept wanting to try again. Angela watched us with that warm, steady smile. She always had the kind that made you feel seen without saying a word. And for a few hours, I almost forgot where my parents were, what they were doing, who they were with. But then the photos appeared. That afternoon, while Lily slept curled against my arm, I opened Facebook and saw Emma's post. A perfect picture of the Colorado cabin dusted with snow, the mountains glowing behind them like a postcard. Emma stood front and center, arms lifted in joy, with Ryan beside her and my parents smiling proudly in matching red sweaters. The caption read, "Family time at the cabin." Not a single mention of me. Not even a joke about me being with Angela. Just a neat little picture of what they considered the family, and in that version, I was not there. A strange, cold feeling settled in my stomach. I told myself it didn't matter. That I was having fun. That I didn't need snow or a fancy cabin. But the truth was quieter and sharper. I had been placed somewhere else intentionally and told it was special so I wouldn't feel the sting. I didn't know the word deprioritize then, but I felt it. I felt it when I imagined them laughing together in the snow, posing by the huge fireplace, drinking hot cocoa from matching mugs. I felt it when I realized they had made plans for everyone but me. And I felt it most of all when I scrolled through the comments and saw relatives typing things like "beautiful family" and "everyone together, so lovely." Because everyone didn't include me. That night, back in the guest room at Angela's house, I lay awake listening to the soft hum of the heater and told myself a story I needed to believe. "It's just one Christmas," I whispered into the dark. "Next year will be different." I held on to that hope like a promise. But deep down, even at 13, something inside me already knew the truth. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was the beginning. The first thread in a pattern that would eventually unravel everything I thought family was supposed to be. The year I turned 16, the Reed house buzzed with the same pre-holiday excitement it always had, but that excitement never seemed to reach me anymore. I remember walking into the kitchen after school, dropping my backpack by the door, and hearing Emma squeal about Disneyland at Christmas. "We already booked the hotel on Main Street," she said, waving a printout of fireworks exploding over the castle. Ryan chimed in about gingerbread churros and holiday parades. I waited for my name to appear in the conversation the way it used to, but instead Mom turned to me with a sympathetic smile that felt rehearsed. "Honey, we thought you wouldn't want to miss your midterm prep. You're our studious one." She said it proudly, as if she were celebrating me. But she never asked if I wanted to go. Not once. She simply decided that I wouldn't mind being left out again. I nodded, pretending it was fine, and went upstairs to study, except I didn't study. I sat on my bed staring at the wall, thinking that maybe this was my fault. Maybe I wasn't fun enough, loud enough, easy enough to take along. 2 years later, when I was 18, the reason shifted again. This time it was a Christmas cruise in the Caribbean. The kind where people take pictures holding coconuts and wearing Santa hats on the beach. I found out about it the same way I found out about everything, through a conversation I wasn't part of. I walked in on Emma and Mom packing swimsuits and sundresses in the hallway. "Oh," Mom said lightly, as if realizing she forgot to mention an errand, "the cruise only has one extra bunk, sweetheart. And your brother's girlfriend is coming, so it just didn't work out this year." Another soft, pitying smile. Another dismissal wrapped in gentleness. I remember thinking, they're not even trying to come up with new excuses anymore. That was the year I learned how quickly people can rearrange the definition of family when it benefits them. How easily I could be removed from the picture without disrupting the symmetry they cared about. By 20, I was in college in Seattle, juggling a part-time job at a bookstore, waiting tables on weekends, studying late into the night to keep my scholarship. That Christmas, my family went on a ski trip to Utah. I didn't know until I saw Emma's Instagram story, her posing with new skis, and the caption, Annual Reed Snow Trip. I stared at it while walking between classes, the cold air stinging my cheeks. Later that day, Mom finally texted me. "We assumed you'd be working for extra money, honey. We didn't want to put you in a tough spot financially." It was impressive, really, how quickly they could turn their decisions into something that sounded like they were doing me a favor. They didn't ask if I was working. They didn't ask if I needed the extra hours. They didn't ask if I wanted to come. They assumed, and then made the assumption sound responsible, thoughtful, almost noble. And the worst part? I let them. I believed them. Because I had been trained to. Every time a new Christmas trip appeared online, the Disney photo, the Caribbean beach shot, the Utah skiing video, relatives commented the same things. "Where's Lauren? Missing one. Is she taking the picture?" And every time, without fail, Mom responded with, "Oh, Lauren had to work." Or, "She chose to stay back to study." Or, "She's always been our busy bee." It was like she was building a public narrative about me that I had no control over Lauren, the responsible one, the hardworking one, the one who chooses not to come. As if my absence were a personal preference and not a decision made for me. Over time, I started to internalize that version of myself. Maybe I really was too busy. Maybe I really did prefer staying home. Maybe I didn't belong in those pictures the way they did. But while the Reed family perfected the art of excluding me with polished excuses and curated holiday photos, Angela quietly built something else. A counterweight, a refuge. A truth-telling space I didn't know I desperately needed. Every Christmas Eve, she invited me before I even had a chance to wonder where I'd end up. "We're watching, It's a Wonderful Life," she'd text. "You're coming, right?" Not asked like a question, asked like a certainty. Mark would drive up to Seattle, sometimes just to bring me a box of homemade fudge he insisted was his famous recipe, which we all knew Angela actually made. Little Lily, growing older now, would insist I sit next to her for the movie, clutching my arm when Clarence got his wings. They didn't try to replace my family. They didn't try to make it seem like they were rescuing me. They just made room for me in a way that felt effortless, natural, genuine. And every year, when I'd walk into their warm little house in Portland or the condo they rented for Christmas Eve in Seattle, Angela would hug me and whisper the same words in my ear. "You're always welcome here, sweetheart. No invitation needed." She said it casually, like it was obvious. Like it was the most normal truth in the world. But for me, it was a lifeline. A small sentence that contradicted the bigger, louder message I was getting everywhere else. That family was conditional. That belonging had prerequisites. That I had somehow failed an exam I never knew I was taking. It took years before I understood the impact of those sentences. At 16, 17, 18, I still blamed myself. I replayed every conversation, every holiday, every missed trip, wondering what I could have done differently. Maybe I really didn't make it clear that I wanted to go. Maybe they didn't think I'd have fun. Maybe I should have spoken up. Maybe I'm overreacting. Every maybe felt like a weight I carried alone. Slowly, I began to withdraw. In group chats, I stopped asking about Christmas plans because they always changed the subject or left my messages unanswered. I became quiet, the invisible sibling, the afterthought no one needed to account for. What I didn't know then but would eventually learn is that silence sometimes isn't acceptance, sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's the only way to cope when you're being written out of your own family's story year after year. And for me, those 4 Christmases turned silence into habit, habit into expectation, expectation into resignation. By the time I graduated high school, I had learned to calibrate my expectations down to almost nothing. So when I moved to Seattle for college, I told myself it would be a fresh start, new city, new friends, new possibilities untouched by old patterns. I rented a tiny off-campus apartment with peeling laminate floors and a window that looked directly at a brick wall, but it was mine. I worked part-time at a bookstore, picked up extra shifts during finals, and buried myself in textbooks the way some people bury themselves in blankets. I kept my GPA high, not because anyone was checking, but because doing well gave me something solid to hold on to. Stability, achievement, proof that I was more than an afterthought. Every December, like clockwork, Angela and Mark mailed me a Christmas card handwritten in real ink, the kind that smudges if you touch it too soon, always decorated with doodles from Lily. Sometimes they drive up to Seattle just to drop off a small tin of cookies or a scarf, Angela knitted. My parents, meanwhile, usually sent a generic $25 gift card with a printed note. Hope you're doing well. Stay warm. Love, Mom and Dad. No visit. No call. No, when can we see you? It was like they had outsourced affection to whatever seasonal promotion Target was running. Then came my senior year, the fall that felt like every hour of studying, every shift worked, every night spent awake in the library was finally leading somewhere. The university scheduled the winter graduation ceremony for mid-December, just a little over a week before Christmas. I was proud. So proud. The kind of proud that makes your heart feel too big for your chest. I wanted to share it. I wanted, maybe foolishly, for my family to show up just once, to fill a row of seats with familiar faces instead of empty space. So, I did what any hopeful daughter would do. I sent an email to my parents weeks ahead of time with the details. I texted them again in the Reed family group chat with the link to my ceremony. I even followed up with a reminder because a part of me knew that my message might get lost under ski trip planning and group selfies. Mom responded first. "We'll try, honey," she wrote. "It's just complicated with everyone's schedule and the Christmas trip to Breckenridge this year." Breckenridge. Their big trip of the season. The one Emma had been talking about since July. The one Ryan had bought new ski gear for months in advance. The one they had budgeted, coordinated, and hyped with military precision. But for my graduation? We'll try. I told myself not to read into it. After all, they didn't say no. Just complicated. Just, we'll try. But the pit in my stomach said everything I didn't have the courage to admit. On the morning of my graduation, it snowed lightly, soft white flakes that made the campus look like a postcard. I arrived early, cap slightly crooked, gown wrinkled from being stuffed in its plastic bag, nerves buzzing under my skin. I scanned the auditorium for the family section, and I kept scanning long after my roommates found their people. Moms with bouquets. Dads taking shaky videos. Siblings waving signs. I kept looking until my eyes blurred. The Reed row was empty. Completely, achingly empty. For a moment, I felt foolish standing there, clutching the program like a life raft. Then, just as I was about to sit down, I heard someone shouting my name. I turned, and there they were. Angela, running toward me with her arms out. Mark behind her carrying a bouquet that looked too big for his hands. And little Lily sprinting full speed, dragging a hand-painted banner twice her size that read, in crooked red letters, "We're proud of you, Lauren." Something inside me cracked at the sight. Relief, gratitude, grief mixed together so tightly, I couldn't separate one from the other. Angela hugged me like she might glue the broken pieces back in place. "We wouldn't miss this for the world," she whispered. And I believed her. Because she never had. The ceremony itself passed in a blur, names called, cameras flashing, applause rising and falling like waves. When it was my turn to walk across the stage, I looked toward the empty Reed row anyway. Old habits die hard. But then I turned my head and glimpsed Angela and Mark, both standing to cheer, Lily waving her banner wildly. And, for the first time that day, I didn't feel alone. After the ceremony, we brushed the snow off a bench and took pictures together, cheesy, mismatched, imperfect photos that I treasure more than any professional family portrait we ever took. We stopped by a tiny pizza shop near campus, squeezing into a booth too small for 4 people because it was warm and cozy and smelled like melted cheese and comfort. While we waited for our slices, I pulled out my phone to check messages from my parents, maybe a congratulations, or a picture from the airport at least. Instead, the first thing that popped up was an Instagram notification. Emma had posted a boomerang video of her and Ryan holding hot chocolate mugs in front of a Christmas tree made of skis. The caption, "Christmas kickoff in Breckenridge," posted 2 hours earlier. Which meant they hadn't tried at all. They had already flown out. Long before my ceremony began. Long before I walked that stage alone. I stared at the screen until the image blurred, the noise of the restaurant fading around me. It wasn't shock, I felt it was clarity. Cold, sharp, painful clarity. They had known. They had planned. They had chosen their image, their tradition, their perfect aesthetic Christmas over showing up for their youngest child on one of the biggest days of her life. Angela must have seen something shift in my face because she leaned in gently. "Lauren," she said, her voice soft. "You deserved a whole row of people cheering for you today. I'm sorry you didn't get that from them." Her apology wasn't an attack. It wasn't pity. It was truth. A truth no one else had ever acknowledged out loud. I forced a small smile, swallowing the ache swelling in my throat. "It's okay," I said, and I meant it only halfway. "At least you came." But inside, I felt something break. Quietly, permanently. Adulthood didn't give me the freedom I imagined, it only sharpened old wounds into something quieter, heavier, more permanent. After graduation, I slipped straight into the tech world, the kind that rewards long hours and perfectionism. I was good at it. Maybe too good. By 24, I was already leading small teams. By 26, I was presenting in meetings with senior leadership. By 28, I was a senior data analyst trusted with product decisions most people 10 years older than me were barely touching. I built a life from spreadsheets and late nights, a life that felt stable only because I sustained it myself. No one handed me anything. No one saved me from burnout. No one checked if I was eating or sleeping or celebrating holidays. The Reed family didn't ask about any of that, they only bragged about my job title to relatives in passing, like it made them look good. And every December, like clockwork, the pattern continued. My parents, Emma and Ryan, launched into planning their annual Reed Christmas trip, as if the past 10 years had been a warm-up. Florida, 1 year, Vermont another. Then a cruise in the Bahamas, then some snowy cabin in Idaho with a hot tub and a private chef. I never heard about the trips directly, never from their mouths or texts. It was always indirect, like seeing footprints, without ever seeing who left them. Once, when I was 25, I opened Instagram during my lunch break and saw Emma's story, a flat lay of matching passports and luggage tags with the caption, "Reed Christmas Escape Planning Meeting with the Fam." There were 4 place settings on the table. 4 mugs. 4 shadows in the photo. Not 5. Never 5. Another time, someone in the extended family texted Angela because they assumed I was joining the Florida trip and wanted to coordinate a visit. Angela had no idea what they were talking about, she didn't even know about the trip. A cousin eventually sent her a screenshot from the private Reed Christmas Escape group chat. My name wasn't in it. Not even as an afterthought. Angela forwarded it to me with a short message, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't know." I remember staring at the screenshot for a long time, tracing the little icons of my parents, Emma and Ryan. They had planned the Sunshine State family getaway without even pretending to involve me, not even to ask if I was free. Not even to maintain the facade. The next day, I saw the comments under Emma's post about the trip, relatives writing things like, "Where's Lauren? Why isn't she in the planning?" Mom had already answered before I even saw it. "Oh, she always chooses work. That's just who she is." The way she said it, so breezy, so confident, so public, made it sound like a personality flaw. Like my absence was a choice they had to respect, rather than a decision they made for me long before I had a say. The first few years, it hurt, then it numbed. Eventually I learned to rely on a simple coping mechanism. If they didn't include me, I wouldn't include the hope. I signed up for holiday shifts, volunteered for year-end pushes, offered to take on low-priority but important tasks during Christmas week. My managers loved me for it, my coworkers were grateful, and I told myself that being useful was better than being disappointed. I was good at it. Maybe too good. By 24, I was already leading small teams. By 26, I was presenting in meetings with senior leadership. By 28, I was a senior data analyst trusted with product decisions most people 10 years older than me were barely touching. I built a life from spreadsheets and late nights, a life that felt stable only because I sustained it myself. No one handed me anything. No one saved me from burnout. There were 4 place settings on the table. 4 mugs. 4 shadows in the photo. Not 5. Never 5. Another time, someone in the extended family texted Angela because they assumed I was joining the Florida trip and wanted to coordinate a visit. Angela had no idea what they were talking about. She didn't even know about the trip. A cousin eventually sent her a screenshot from the private Read Christmas Escape group chat. My name wasn't in it. Not even as an afterthought. I'd walk in and the warmth would hit me instantly, cookies cooling on the counter, Mark humming off-key to Bing Crosby. Lily running up to hug me so hard she nearly knocked the air from my lungs. We'd watch It's a Wonderful Life for the 10th, 20th, 30th time, and Lily would curl up next to me under the same fuzzy blanket. By the time the credits rolled, she'd be fast asleep, her head resting on my shoulder, her breath slow and even trusting, safe. If I don't expect anything, I whispered during late-night deployments, they can't disappoint me. It became my mantra. A shield, a lie I could live with. But even lies can't hide everything. Every Christmas Eve around 6 or 7 p.m., right when the loneliness started to thicken, my phone would ring. Angela's name. Always Angela's. We're at the house, she'd say. The hot chocolate's ready. Lily wants to know if you're coming. I started noticing how differently my shoulders sat in their presence, how my breath seemed less shallow, how I didn't have to rehearse my words or shrink myself to avoid being labeled dramatic or sensitive. At my parents' house, every part of me felt out of place, too much or not enough. At Angela's, I felt like a person again. Not the forgotten sibling. Not the scapegoat. Just Lauren. By the time I was 28, the annual exclusion had lost its sting. Not because it didn't matter, of course it mattered, but because my heart had grown strong enough to survive without the Reed family's validation. Every year I still saw the photos. Emma jumping in Florida waves, Ryan posing on a Vermont sleigh ride, my parents laughing in coordinated outfits on the cruise deck. Every year, the caption said Reed Family Christmas. And every year, a tiny part of me whispered, that isn't the whole family. But then I'd look at my own Christmas Eve photos, me and Angela and Mark and Lily squeezed together on the couch, matching pajamas. Flour on our sleeves, hot chocolate mustaches on our faces, and something warm would bloom inside me. Maybe I didn't have the family I was born into. But I had the family who showed up. And at that time in my life, I thought that was enough. I just didn't know yet that one Christmas, one unexpected bonus, one spontaneous decision would change everything. By the time December rolled around this year, I had already resigned myself to another quiet holiday routine. Long work shifts, cheap takeout, maybe a late-night movie with myself on the couch. That was the story I had lived for so long that I'd stopped questioning it. But life has a strange way of shifting in small, silent moments, moments you don't realize will change everything until afterward. Mine happened on a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks before Christmas, when HR emailed me my annual performance bonus. $25,000. A number that felt surreal, dizzying, almost dangerous in its possibility. My coworkers treated their bonuses like lottery winnings. Within an hour, 3 people in my pod were already planning to upgrade their cars, another was booking a luxury shopping spree, someone else was researching crypto. The office buzzed with talk of splurges and treating yourself and finally doing something fun. I smiled politely at their excitement but felt strangely out of sync with all of it. I didn't want a new car. I didn't want a shopping blowout. I didn't want to throw the money at something that would glow for a moment and fade just as quickly. I wanted something that mattered. That evening, I ducked into a little cafe in downtown Seattle. One of those places that goes all in for Christmas garlands everywhere, twinkling lights dangling from the ceiling, soft holiday music spilling from hidden speakers. I sat with my hands wrapped around a mug of peppermint mocha and let myself drift through the memories I usually kept tucked away. 13-year-old me staring at Colorado cabin photos, 16-year-old me pretending I didn't care about Disneyland, 18-year-old me reading cruise captions from a dorm room, 20-year-old me watching Utah ski videos while shelving books at my part-time job, 22-year-old me walking across a graduation stage to an empty row. It hit me then so softly, yet so completely, that maybe I had spent too long trying to earn a place in a family that had shown me repeatedly that they didn't want to make room. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop waiting for an invitation that would never come. And instead build the Christmas I always wanted with the people who had always shown up. The idea dropped into my mind like a spark. What if I used this bonus to create the kind of Christmas I always wanted, but with the people who actually showed up? The thought made my heart beat faster, not with anxiety, but with something startling: excitement. Hope, a future that felt like my own creation instead of something handed to me in scraps. I opened my laptop right there in the cafe, fingers trembling slightly as I began searching. Mountain Lodge, Christmas, Colorado, I typed. And suddenly, the screen filled with images straight out of a holiday movie: snow-covered cabins glowing with warm light, fireplaces crackling behind glass, sleigh rides through pine forests, decorated trees under vaulted wooden ceilings, hot springs steaming under falling snow. One lodge in particular caught my breath: a secluded mountain retreat with private cabins, Christmas dinner packages, a spa, and a sleigh ride experience under lantern lights. It was expensive, so expensive I had to blink twice. But for once in my life, money didn't feel like something I had to guard or justify. For once, it felt like a tool I could use to give something back to the people who had given me the only true love and attention I'd ever known. Without letting myself overthink it, I booked a full 7-day package for 4 people: me, Angela, Mark, and Lily. I added the sleigh ride, the private Christmas Eve dinner, the hot springs passes, and, because I knew how much she needed it, I booked a spa day just for Angela. When the confirmation email hit my inbox, I stared at it in disbelief. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't imagining a life I didn't have. I had actually done it. The next morning, I dialed Angela with a pounding heart. "Can you and Mark and Lily take the week of Christmas off?" I asked. "Don't ask questions. Just trust me." Her reaction was priceless, a mixture of confusion and concern. "Sweetheart, we can't afford anything fancy. And Mark has finals for his students, and it's already taken care of." I interrupted gently. "Everything. Completely. I just need you to say yes." There was a long, slow inhale. Then, "Lauren, what did you do?" "A good thing," I said. "I did a good thing." 2 days later, I drove down to Portland with a folder full of printed booking confirmations and a glossy brochure of the lodge. When I walked through the door, Lily barreled into me like a tiny rocket, nearly knocking the folder from my hands. "I missed you," she squealed. "Why do adults always take so long to come visit?" "Because adults are slow," I teased. But I brought something to make up for it. I spread the papers across the kitchen table. Angela covered her mouth with both hands. Mark's eyes widened. Lily gasped loudly when she saw the photo of the cabin surrounded by snow. "We're going here?" she shrieked, already jumping in circles. Mark blinked several times, his voice thick, when he finally spoke. "Lauren, this is too much. This is..." He shook his head. "We can't let you do something like this for us." I looked at him, steady and sure in a way I had never felt with my own parents. "You drove 4 hours in a snowstorm to watch me graduate when my own parents wouldn't drive 20 minutes. You made room for me every Christmas when they didn't even notice I wasn't there. This..." I gestured toward the papers, the plans, the magic waiting for us. "This is not too much. This is payback for all the times you showed up when they didn't." Angela's eyes filled with tears. She didn't say thank you, she didn't need to. Her hug said everything. A week later, as we boarded the flight to Colorado, my chest tightened in a way I didn't fully understand. It wasn't anxiety, it wasn't fear. It was something softer, something healing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking onto a plane alone or working overtime while my family posted vacation photos. For the first time, I was stepping into a Christmas trip that had room for me. A Christmas built by me. A Christmas with the family I chose. As the plane rose into the sky, I looked out at the clouds glowing under the winter sun and realized something I had never allowed myself to believe. This year, Christmas belonged to me, too. The first 3 days at the lodge felt like stepping into a life I had once believed was reserved for other people. The kind of life where Christmas didn't mean waiting for an excuse, or bracing for disappointment, or checking social media to see where I hadn't been invited. It felt almost unreal at first, too soft, too warm, too easy. But slowly, the edges of disbelief faded, and what was left was something painfully simple. This was what Christmas was supposed to feel like. Each morning, the mountain air hit us like a gentle slap, brisk, clean, laced with pine. Lily was the first to fling herself into the snow every day, making dramatic snow angels while yelling, "Lauren! Look, this is my best one yet." She learned to ice skate on the frozen pond behind the lodge, shuffling at first, then gliding with the full confidence of an 11-year-old who believed the world would always catch her. Watching her laugh made something warm loosen in my chest, something that had been stiff for years. Mark, on the other hand, discovered the outdoor jacuzzi like he was uncovering buried treasure. The first time he sank into it, steam rising around him while snowflakes melted on his hair, he let out a laugh, so pure it startled all of us. Angela joked that she hadn't heard that sound from him since their honeymoon. He splashed water like a kid, absolutely delighted, and I found myself laughing, too, real laughter, the kind I hadn't heard in my own voice for a long time. In the evenings, after Lily fell asleep and Mark retreated into a book by the fire, Angela and I curled up with blankets and glasses of red wine. The crackling fireplace filled the room with a comforting glow. One night, the flames threw shadows across her face as she stared at her glass for a long time before speaking softly. "Lauren, I've watched the way your parents and siblings treated you for 15 years. I always saw it. I just didn't know how to step in without making things worse for you." I blinked at her, surprised. I had never heard her say it so directly before. She reached out, placing her hand over mine. "It hurt me to see them overlook you. To watch you pretend it didn't bother you. You deserved far more than you ever got from them." Her voice cracked a little. I should have spoken up sooner. Something in me settled hearing those words, validation I didn't realize I had been starving for. "You showed up," I whispered. "That was enough." And I meant it. That night, while the cabin glowed with a kind of magic that made me feel both held and seen, I took a photo of our dinner table, simple, candlelit, plates half filled with homemade food, nothing fancy. Nothing showy. Just real. Just mine. I added a single caption. "First real Christmas vacation of my life." With the people who showed up. No tags, no digs. No names. Just truth. I didn't know that truth, however gently written, was about to ignite a firestorm hundreds of miles away. Because at that exact moment, in Tacoma, Emma had posted a carousel of photos from their annual Christmas planning night, staged charcuterie boards, matching pajamas, posed laughter. The Reed brand of curated perfection. Her caption read, "Favorite tradition, planning our annual family Christmas getaway. Family is everything. I do not rate as." Underneath, a cosin asked a simple question. "Where's Lauren? Thought she lived closest now." And Emma, never one to miss a chance to rewrite history, replied, "She never wants to come. She's too busy being important at work." The problem for Emma was timing. Because one of our cousins on Angela's side saw my story. And she didn't stay quiet. She commented publicly under Emma's post. "Funny, she's literally in Colorado right now, on a Christmas trip with Aunt Angela's family. Ihr thinking your way." That comment was the spark. The next hour was the explosion. My phone, which had been peacefully resting on the cabin nightstand, suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree gone rogue. 15 missed calls from Mom. 4 from Dad. 3 from Ryan, 2 voice notes. Several paragraphs of texts. Notifications blinking like a warning alarm. I hadn't even touched the phone when Angela came rushing from the living room, holding hers with wide eyes. "Lauren, I think you need to see this." She handed me her screen, open to a DM from Emma. The message was venom dressed up as concern. "You should be ashamed, making Lauren pay for your fancy mountain trip when you never could afford that yourself. Stop manipulating her." The words sliced through the warm air of the cabin, the audacity almost laughable. Angela's face was pale, tight with hurt. "I cannot believe she." "I can," I murmured. Because Emma never missed an opportunity to twist things, especially when her narrative was threatened. I finally unlocked my own phone. And hell poured out. Mom had left a string of dramatic messages accusing me of publicly humiliating the family and choosing outsiders over my real family. Dad had sent a long, lecturing paragraph about disrespect and family loyalty. Ryan's voice note was blunt. "What the hell are you doing, Lauren? Why would you make things weird?" As if I had made things weird after 15 years of being excluded. Then Emma texted me directly, furious, playing the victim, blaming Angela, calling this trip a pathetic stunt. I scrolled through the chaos, the familiar heat of anger rising, not the helpless kind I used to feel, but something sharper, clearer. Something that told me I didn't have to swallow it anymore. I walked out onto the balcony, the cold air hitting my face as snow drifted silently around me. My hands trembled not from fear, but from the weight of a decision I had never dared make until now. For years, I had let silence be the buffer. For years, I had let them write the story. For years, I had pretended their choices didn't hurt me. But not this time. Not this Christmas. Staring out into the snowy darkness, I whispered to myself. No more silence. Not this Christmas. I down and a fiddle strayed. And I meant every word. I stood on the balcony for several minutes, the cold air biting at my fingers, trying to steady the adrenaline flooding my body. The snow fell in soft, slow spirals, the world quiet and peaceful in a way my phone was not. Inside the cabin, Angela and Mark waited, worry written all over their faces. Finally, I walked back in, grabbed my phone, and said, "I'm calling her." Angela didn't try to stop me, she simply nodded and squeezed my hand. I hit Emma's name. It is. He took a step toward me. I said. I raised my phone and dialed without hesitation. Angela answered on the first ring. "Hey, sweetheart, are you okay?" I turned on speaker. "Dad is in my apartment and refuses to leave. Can you have Mark come over?" The moment Dennis heard Mark's name, just the name, his expression shifted from anger to something else, fear of losing control. "You're choosing sides now?" he barked. "You're killing your mother with this nonsense." We're forwarded face full side. There was a pause just long enough for the guilt to flicker before Emma laughed in that sharp, dismissive way she'd perfected. "Oh my God, Lauren, stop being so dramatic. You're too uptight. You always made everything awkward. And you're the one who always had exams, or work, or some project. You never seemed excited to come." I felt my jaw tighten. The way she rewrote history with such confidence made something in me snap. "Really? Let's go down the list, then. Since you seem to have such a selective memory." And I did. I listed them one by one, each memory landing like a stone on the table between us. The cabin in Colorado when I was 13? You told me there wasn't enough space. Disneyland at 16? You said I had midterms even though you never asked. The Christmas cruise when I was 18? You gave Ryan's girlfriend the extra bunk. Utah at 20? You assumed I'd rather work. Florida, Vermont. The years you created that Read Christmas escape group chat that never included me. Emma didn't interrupt. Not once. And, while we're being honest, I said, my voice low, steady. Let's talk about my graduation. When you all flew to Breckenridge instead of watching me walk across that stage. Do you remember who drove 4 hours in the snow to be there for 30 seconds of my ceremony? I glanced at the couch, at Angela sitting there silently with tears gathering in her eyes. Angela, who's sitting right next to me right now? That was when Emma dropped the gaslighting and shifted into her favorite weapon, money. "So, this is what this is about? You feeling rich now?" she snapped. "You're rubbing your money in our faces paying for some overpriced luxury trip, flaunting it online instead of spending Christmas with your real family?" Angela inhaled sharply. Mark muttered, "Unbelievable." I said nothing for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle. Then I answered softly, soft enough to be heard, sharp enough to cut. "Real family doesn't make you beg for a seat at the Christmas table. Real family doesn't need excuses to include you. I'm spending my money on the people who never once made me doubt whether I was wanted." Before she could recover, I pressed the red button and ended the call. Silence filled the room for a beat. Then my phone buzzed again. "Mom," this time. A long, dramatic text that stretched into a wall of words. "The years you created that Read Christmas escape group chat that never included me." Emma didn't interrupt. Not once. And, while we're being honest, I said, my voice low, steady, let's talk about my graduation. When you all flew to Breckenridge instead of watching me walk across that stage. Do you remember who drove 4 hours in the snow to be there for 30 seconds of my ceremony? I glanced at the couch, at Angela sitting there silently with tears gathering in her eyes. Angela, who's sitting right next to me right now? That was when Emma dropped the gaslighting and shifted into her favorite weapon, money. So, this is what this is about? You feeling rich now? She snapped. You're rubbing your money in our faces paying for some overpriced luxury trip, flaunting it online instead of spending Christmas with your real family? Angela inhaled sharply. Mark muttered, unbelievable. I said nothing for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle. I read it out loud. Lauren, your behavior is cruel, deliberate, spiteful. You are humiliating this family on social media and hurting your mother deeply. Until you apologize to everyone, you are not welcome at our Christmas or any Reed family gathering. I almost laughed. A bitter, breathy sound. They were banning me from something I'd never been invited to. I typed one sentence back. That's okay, I already have a Christmas to go to. I set my phone face down on the table. No more pretending this was normal. And as I sat there with the only people who had ever shown up for me, I made a quiet, unwavering decision. When I got back to Seattle, I wasn't going to let things slide back into the old pattern. Not this time, not ever again. When I returned to Seattle after the trip, the city felt sharper than usual, cold air slicing against my cheeks, the sky heavy with gray clouds that threatened snow. I carried my suitcase up the stairs to my apartment, still holding onto the warmth of the lodge, the laughter, the safety. But all of that evaporated the moment I turned the corner and saw him. My father. Dennis Reed stood stiffly in front of my apartment door, arms crossed, wearing the expression he reserved for disappointed teachers and store clerks who didn't honor coupons. The disappointed dad face. The same one he used when he wanted to convey authority and shame at the same time. I paused, halfway up the steps, his presence hitting me like a physical force. Dad? What are you doing here? He didn't answer the question. Instead, he pushed past me the moment I unlocked the door and stepped inside like he owned the place. No greeting. No hug. Not even a look around. He stood in the middle of my living room, jaw tight, already prepared to perform. How could you embarrass your mother like that? He demanded. There it was, the opening line of his well-rehearsed script. Dad. You humiliated her, he snapped. Posting things online, letting people think we excluded you. Angela has always been jealous of your mother, and now she's turned you against us. This ends now, Lauren. Jealous. That old accusation, the one he dusted off whenever he needed a villain. He wasn't finished. Family loyalty means we handle things internally. Privately, you don't put our business on social media. You don't shame your mother like that. Like describe. I closed the door quietly, behind me. Dad. I posted one photo of a dinner table. He ignored that. You created chaos. People are talking. Your mother is devastated. And you will fix it. His certainty astonished me. Even now, after everything, they still expected me to fold, because that was the role I had always played. But not anymore. I took a slow breath. I have some questions first. He frowned. What questions? Why wasn't I invited to the first cabin trip in Colorado when I was 13? His eyes flickered, just barely. Oh, sweetheart, that was. Why not Disneyland at 16? Why not the Caribbean cruise at 18? Why not Utah at 20? Why not Breckenridge during my graduation week? My voice didn't shake. Why was I never included? He opened his mouth, closed it, then attempted the route he always took when cornered. Fog, confusion, selective memory. Those were logistical decisions. Logistical, I repeated. You had school, exams, jobs. We thought you preferred staying with Angela. I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I pulled out my phone, opened a folder I'd created during the trip, and held it out to him. Screenshots, all of them. Mom commenting, oh, Lauren had to work. Lauren chose not to come. She's too busy. She never wants to join. Each line, a tiny knife. Dad's face tightened as he scrolled. This is out of context. It's your context, I said softly. It's the story you all told to make yourselves look good. He pushed the phone back into my hand like it burned him. You're being dramatic, Lauren. You're holding grudges over nothing. Angela has poisoned you against your own family. You're killing your mother with this behavior. There it was. The accusation. The guilt. The manipulation. The same tools he had used my entire life. Only this time, they didn't work. I felt something settle inside me, clarity, maybe, or courage, or exhaustion. You don't get to exclude me for more than a decade and then tell me I'm destroying the family for finally going where I'm wanted. I'm done pretending this is normal. He blinked, startled. I had never spoken to him like that, not once. I need you to leave, I said. His face darkened. We resolve this as a family. You apologize, and we move on. No, I said calmly. We're not doing that anymore. It is. He took a step toward me. I raised my phone and dialed without hesitation. Angela answered on the first ring. Hey, sweetheart, are you okay? I turned on speaker. Dad is in my apartment and refuses to leave. Can you have Mark come over? The moment Dennis heard Mark's name, just the name, his expression shifted from anger to something else, fear of losing control. You're choosing sides now? He barked. You're killing your mother with this nonsense. It rever times, but he also knew he wouldn't win a shouting match in front of my uncle, the man he'd always been intimidated by for being too calm, too honest. So he grabbed his coat, jerked the door open, and hurled one last line over his shoulder. You'll regret this, Lauren. Then he slammed the door so hard the frame rattled. 5 minutes later, Angela and Mark arrived, still in winter jackets, breathless from rushing. Mark walked the entire apartment like a quiet guardian, checking the locks, making sure the door was secure. When he finished, he came to stand beside me, resting a gentle hand on my shoulder. You are my daughter too, Lauren, he said, voice steady. And I'm proud of you. You finally stood up for yourself. The words nearly undid me. That night, even after they insisted on staying over and sleeping on my couch, just in case, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the entire confrontation. Every sentence, every look, every accusation. And for a moment, just a moment, I wondered, am I really being too harsh? Too emotional? Too reactive? But then I remembered 13, 16, 18, 20, graduation, Florida, Vermont. Every empty seat at every family event I'd ever hoped they would show up for. Every Christmas that had passed without a single thought for whether I wanted to be included. No, I wasn't being too harsh. I was finally being fair to myself. The next morning, I woke to a vibration on my nightstand, the rapid, insistent buzz of a message too long to fit on the lock screen. I blinked the sleep from my eyes, reached for my phone, and felt my stomach clench the moment I saw who it was from. Emma. The text was a wall of gray bubbles, a digital manifesto. Paragraphs stacked on paragraphs as if she'd stayed up all night crafting it. I opened it reluctantly, already bracing myself for the tone I knew by heart, half accusation, half victimhood, all revisionist history. And I was right. She accused me of acting like a perpetual victim, of ruining Christmas with my negativity, of making every holiday uncomfortable. She claimed I never wanted to come, that I isolated myself, that she tried so hard to include me. She even rewrote childhood moments, tiny things I remembered vividly, and twisted them into narratives where she was the generous sibling, and I was the one who didn't fit the family vibe. I stared at it for a full minute. Not because any of it was true, but because of how meticulously she'd constructed the illusion. She didn't just lie, she rewrote our entire childhood as if she were the encyclopedia of our family. I forwarded the whole thing to Angela. 10 minutes later, she knocked softly on my bedroom door. Can I come in? I nodded, and she sat beside me on the bed, reading each line with her brows drawn. Oh my, she murmured. Every single sentence is gaslighting. She tapped one paragraph. She's flipping reality, turning you into the scapegoat for their guilt. Look at this, she even blames you for missing the Disney trip when you were 16, as if you chose studying over being included. He said sure. We went through the text together, line by line, unraveling the falsehoods like threads from an unraveling sweater. In the quiet of that morning, with the winter light filtering through my curtains, something crystallized in me. I wasn't imagining anything. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't misremembering. My sister had been rewriting the story for years. And now, the rest of the family was finally reading it. Because, while Emma sent me a manifesto, the extended family had their own group chat, a space my parents had always pretended didn't exist, and overnight questions had exploded inside it. One aunt asked, "Why is Lauren never in the Christmas photos?" Another wrote, "I thought she lived in Seattle. Why do you always say she's too far?" Someone else chimed in, "Carol, you need to explain. We're confused. Is debuilded in folder in Haltake?" And then shockingly, a cousin wrote bluntly, "Carol, you should look at how you treat your daughter." My mother panicked. She called me sobbing loud. Messy, dramatic sobs meant to drown out curiosity or criticism. "Lauren, why are you doing this to us? Why are you turning everyone against the family? Why are you punishing us?" I closed my eyes. "Mom, I didn't turn anyone against you. They just finally saw what you've been doing. That's not my fault." She gasped like I'd slapped her. "You are destroying this family's reputation. Your father is devastated. Your sister is devastated. Do you even care what you're doing?" "I care about the truth," I said quietly. For once. She hung up without saying goodbye. Not long after, I saw a voicemail from Ryan. His voice was careful, polished, practiced. "We need to heal, Lauren. We need to forgive and move forward as a family. Holding on to the past won't help anyone. Not a single acknowledgement. Not one admission. Not a shred of responsibility. Just avoidance, dressed up as wisdom." I texted back one question. "Did you know I wasn't invited to Breckenridge during my graduation week?" The 3 dots blinked. Then his reply came. "Mom said you had to work." A chill ran through me. He hadn't even asked. He never had. He took the easy story, the convenient story, the story that preserved the family image, and accepted it without hesitation. He chose convenience over truth, just like always. That Sunday, Angela invited me to dinner at her house in Portland. "We're having a bigger gathering," she said. "I think it's time." When I arrived, the house was filled with warmth and chatter. Angela's younger sister, her husband, their kids, even a couple of neighbors who had become like family over the years. The table was crowded with dishes everyone brought: roasted vegetables, pot roast, homemade rolls, pies. And instead of the stiff, camera-ready smiles I grew up with, everyone here looked genuine, relaxed. Like they actually wanted to be in each other's presence. Throughout dinner, stories surfaced. Angela's sister said quietly, "We always wondered why you weren't in your family's holiday pictures. It didn't make sense." Her husband added, "We noticed the patterns, Lauren. We just hoped things would get better for you." Another cousin-like neighbor said, "I'm glad you're finally speaking up. It's been a long time coming." I felt seen in a way I had never felt at any Reed gathering. Then came the softest moment of all. Halfway through dessert, Lily scooted her chair closer to mine and whispered, "Can I just call you my sister from now on?" My heart squeezed so tightly it hurt. Angela, overhearing, placed her hand over mine. Her eyes were glossy, her smile soft. "She's always been your sister," she said. Laughter bubbled around the table. Not forced, not posed, not performative, just warm, safe, real. And that's when Lily asked the question that pulled everything into focus. "So, are you spending Christmas with us this year?" Everyone at the table went still, waiting, hoping, their faces softening with anticipation. I looked around at them. At the people who had shown up for graduations, birthdays, Christmas Eves. At the people who drove 4 hours in the snow to cheer for me. At the people who hugged me without hesitation, who checked if I ate, if I slept, if I was okay. And I felt the answer rise naturally, like it had been waiting for years. "If the invitation is still open," I said slowly, smiling as my chest loosened, "I'd like this to be my Christmas." The room erupted. Cheers. Laughter. Clapping. Lily squealed and hugged me again. Plans flew across the table: sledding, cookies, matching pajamas, a Christmas movie marathon, maybe even a gingerbread house competition. For the first time in my life, Christmas wasn't about waiting for inclusion or bracing for rejection. It was about choosing home. The home that had always chosen me. And I knew, sitting at that table surrounded by love that asked for nothing in return, that I had finally stepped into a new chapter, one where I didn't have to fight for a seat. Because here, my seat had always been waiting. Christmas Eve arrived with the kind of quiet magic I used to watch in movies and wonder if anyone ever actually lived. Angela's house glowed with soft white lights, the windows fogged gently from the warmth inside, and the scent of cinnamon and butter hung in the air like a blanket. For the first time in 29 years, I didn't approach Christmas with a bruise already forming under my ribs. There was no dread, no tightness in my throat, no waiting for a last-minute excuse or for photos to appear online proving I'd been forgotten again. Just peace. And a sense of belonging so real I could feel it in my bones. I stood beside Angela at the kitchen counter, rolling out dough for cinnamon rolls, flour dusting my hands and sweater. Lily was across the room at the dining table, fiercely concentrating on her gingerbread house, tongue poking out slightly as she lined gumdrops along the roof. Mark tended the fireplace, adding another log, humming the same off-key Christmas tune he'd been humming all week. The house felt alive, warm chatter in the background, soft music playing, the kind of comfort that came from people who didn't just tolerate your presence but cherished it. When the cinnamon rolls finished baking, we gathered in the living room, cozy under blankets, ready to exchange our small Christmas Eve gifts. I handed Angela a wrapped book-shaped package. "Open this one first." She peeled back the paper and froze. Inside was a hardcover photo book, pictures from our Colorado Lodge trip. Sleigh rides, snow angels, hot cocoa by the fire, Angela laughing with her whole face the way she rarely allowed herself to back into coma. Each page was a memory stitched together, a reminder of a Christmas filled with presence instead of performance. Angela pressed a hand to her mouth. "Lauren, this is beautiful. You gave me my first real Christmas," I said softly. "I wanted us to remember it." Her eyes shimmered in the glow of the tree. Next, I handed Mark a box. He opened it, revealing a high-quality fishing gear set, something he had once mentioned wanting but dismissed as not needing. He looked up at me with quiet surprise. "Lauren, this is too much. You spent more hours driving through snowstorms for me than any parent ever did," I said. "It's not too much." His eyes softened, and he nodded once, the way men like him showed deep emotion. Then Lily tore open her gift, a giant art set with paints, brushes, markers, canvases. She squealed and threw her arms around my neck. "I'm gonna draw everything." We laughed until our stomachs hurt. After the last ribbon had fallen to the floor, Angela glanced at Mark, then at me. "There's one more thing," she said gently. "For you." She guided me toward a quiet corner of the living room, away from Lily, who was already unpacking her new art supplies. Angela pulled a small velvet box from behind a stack of books and placed it in my hands. My heart stuttered. "Go on," she whispered. Inside was a single house key tied to a small note. "You always have a home here. Love. Mom #2." Each page was a memory stitched together, a reminder of a Christmas filled with presence instead of performance. Angela pressed a hand to her mouth. "Lauren, this is beautiful. You gave me my first real Christmas," I said softly. "I wanted us to remember it." Her eyes shimmered in the glow of the tree. Next, I handed Mark a box. He opened it, revealing a high-quality fishing gear set, something he had once mentioned wanting but dismissed as not needing. The world blurred. I didn't just tear up, I broke. Not the silent, hidden tears I'd trained myself to cry growing up, muffled in bathrooms or behind locked bedroom doors. These were raw, whole-body sobs, the kind that release years of hurt you didn't even realize you were carrying. Angela held me like she had been waiting years for me to collapse into her arms. "You're safe here, sweetheart," she whispered. "You've always been safe here." One aunt responded. "A mother also breaks a child's heart by excluding her from every Christmas for 10 years. Another added, Carol, this didn't start yesterday. Maybe it's time to look at what you've done. And just like that, my mother's usual audience evaporated. Her curated perfect family image on social media went eerily quiet. No matching pajamas. No staged caroling photos. No group shots in front of a perfectly decorated tree. It was as if even she didn't know how to perform after the truth cracked through. Meanwhile, I made a quiet decision in the days that followed. I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand the wounds instead of carrying them blindly into the next chapters of my life. My therapist listened without judgment as I traced the timeline of every Christmas, every exclusion, every lie told in my name. She named things I had never dared to label. I thank you, phase. I cried until the tightness in my chest unraveled, until something new, light, warm, steady took its place. While my new family wrapped me in love, the other side of my life was cracking. Somewhere in Tacoma, my mother had launched her annual holiday guilt trip in the extended family chat, the same script she used whenever she wanted sympathy. It breaks a mother's heart when a child forgets where she came from. But this year, the script didn't land. We created new traditions effortlessly, naturally, like we'd been doing this for years. Before dinner, everyone took turns sharing one thing they were grateful for. When it was my turn, I took a breath and spoke with a steadiness I didn't expect. I'm grateful I finally stopped begging to sit at the wrong table and realized I already had a seat at the right one. The room fell quiet. Angela squeezed my hand. Then Lily piped up, sweet and earnest. I'm grateful for my big sister Lauren. One aunt responded. A mother also breaks a child's heart by excluding her from every Christmas for 10 years. Another added, Carol, this didn't start yesterday. Maybe it's time to look at what you've done. And just like that, my mother's usual audience evaporated. Her curated perfect family image on social media went eerily quiet. No matching pajamas. No staged caroling photos. No group shots in front of a perfectly decorated tree. It was as if even she didn't know how to perform after the truth cracked through. Meanwhile, I made a quiet decision in the days that followed. I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand the wounds instead of carrying them blindly into the next chapters of my life. My therapist listened without judgment as I traced the timeline of every Christmas, every exclusion, every lie told in my name. She named things I had never dared to label. It's height of love, no. Laughter spread through the room, warm as the fire behind us. Later that night, I checked my phone. No messages from my parents. Nothing from Emma. Nothing from Ryan. Not even a generic Merry Christmas. It stung for a moment, not because I still needed them, but because the finality of it felt like a door clicking shut for good. Fireworks flickered across the horizon, reflecting off the snow like glitter tossed across the sky. I wrapped my arms around myself, not out of cold, but out of awe. Awe at the life forming around me. Awe at the girl I used to be, and the woman I was finally becoming. I thought about all the years I had spent chasing a door that never opened. All the times I'd tried to shrink myself small enough to fit inside a family that didn't have room for me. Glasses clinked, laughter filled the room, and just before midnight, as everyone gathered in the living room, Angela introduced me to a neighbor with a gentle hand on my shoulder. This is my daughter, she said. My daughter, Lauren. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. Because in every way that mattered, it was true. As midnight approached, I stepped outside for a breath of crisp night air. Emotional neglect. Scapegoating. Image-based parenting. And she said the words that finally helped everything click into place. Choosing Angela's family over your parents wasn't betrayal, it was self-rescue. Christmas Day felt like a second sunrise. Angela's house filled with people, siblings, cousins, friends who were basically family, and children who ran through the halls with cookie crumbs stuck to their faces.